When does a writer have to introduce the main character's flaw?
Well, I believe that in the first visual of the movie, if you can do that, you've really done a good thing, and that will set up the movie. If not in the first visual, then certainly within the first 5 minutes, I would do that. So we understand, what is this person's issue? What is this person's problem? Why is this person not living the perfect life? Because they're not. And we need to know why not. So having the flaw introduced in the first visual is a good idea. If we can't do it then, soon will be a good idea. Sooner the better, is my view. And then we understand what they have to overcome in themselves. We understand what their personal journey is. So that's one part of the story, the personal journey that they have to deal with. And then we have to learn about what is the other thing that's going on. And we also need to know that flaw so that we understand at the midpoint that they understand what their flaw is. Because at the beginning, they don't understand what their flaw is. It's only at the midpoint when they understand it. Talking about In and Out again, he did not know that he was gay at the beginning. That's his flaw. He was not self-aware. And it's only at the midpoint that he becomes aware of his own sexuality. Then he has a new goal, and he has to figure out how to deal with that goal. So understanding the flaw is key to understanding the character and understanding the journey that the character goes through in the film.
You see the character's flaw is the answer to why the main character is in the predicament that they're in. Can you explain?
Okay, so the character, we go to movies to see a character change. We go to movies to see emotion, as we've been discussing. So if we understand what the character's flaw is, then we understand the need for change. The character doesn't understand the need for change until the inciting incident comes, and they understand that they need something, they need to do something as a result of that. And then at the end of Act 1, something else happens to them when they figure out that it's not just a need, they actually have to do it right away. They're compelled to make a change, to make a goal and make a plan. But your character doesn't really understand this until the midpoint, when they really understand what their flaw is. They understand they need to change, but they don't know what they need to change. They need to change inside, not just outside. And then once they make that change, then they're able to overcome the major obstacle to their goals. And so the flaw is really a central issue for the character. And if you don't know the flaw of your character, you're going to be in trouble trying to write your film. Because the flaw often also causes the low point. It's because the character's greed, or the character's shyness, or the character's overbearingness, or whatever the character's flaw is, causes the low point. And then the character has to change. And once the character changes, they're able to confront whatever the outside issue is that they have to confront and overcome that outside issue. And then at the end, your character may or may not have been able to completely overcome their flaw, but now they can control it and understand it better and avoid making the mistakes that the flaw pushes them into.
You say write your character's view of how did God create the world?
Mm-hmm. One way to get inside your character is to figure out who that character is. And one way to figure out that character is, what would that character say about God creating the world? Now, if the character is a very religious Christian, they have one way to describe that. If the character is a Buddhist, they have another way to describe that. If the character is an atheist, they have another way to describe that. I ask my students, how would your character describe how God made the world? Or if your character does not believe in God, how did the world come about according to this character? So that would give you an insight into the character and into the character's education, upbringing, just about everything. So we understand that character's way of speaking as well. So that gives us a clue as to the character's dialogue, the character's style of talking.
Right, yeah, you've triggered in me a memory of Louise Hay talking about, she called something Mama's God, and however our mother viewed God, is usually how we took it into the world as well.
Oh, that's
so if we
interesting.
saw a punishing God, then we would feel like we're always going to be punished. So that's fascinating.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember my mother's view of God at all. That's interesting. I don't think we ever talked about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that fascinating.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that, but I'm going to think about that now.
Can we talk about status in a conversation? Who maintains one, or are they always shifting?
All right, good idea. Status has so many different influences. For example, if we're talking in a small room, we have a certain tone to our voices, and we have a certain intimacy of discussion, and we have a certain vocabulary. If we're talking in a church, we would have a different vocabulary and a different tone of voice. If we're talking in a stadium, we would have a different tone of voice and a different status when we're talking to another person. If we're talking to a policeman, we talk in a certain way. If the policeman is talking to us, they talk in a certain way. So the status goes like this. But if we look at a scene like in Shakespeare in Love, do you remember Shakespeare in Love?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
There's a scene where Viola comes into her room at her house, and Essex is waiting for her. So when she comes into the room, she has the high status, he has the low status. But as this conversation goes on, the status changes, especially after he kisses her and she slaps him, then he takes charge of the situation and he becomes the high status and tells her what to do. Status in conversation can change in an instant, and it can change according to the people that you're talking to. So again, I was talking about the cop and a person. Let's talk about a mother and a child. So a mother talking to a 5-year-old child has a lot of status, but a 65-year-old mother talking to a 45-year-old child has a different kind of status, especially if the child is helping the mother move into a retirement home or something like that. So the status has changed over time. Status can change in a conversation. Status can change between lovers if they're talking, if they're arguing, especially. If one reveals something about the other that the other didn't know they knew, that can change the status like that. I know you were cheating. Wow. Status changed instantly. So knowing how that affects the dialogue is really important. So status can change according to education, it can change according to the situation, it can change according to the building that you're in, or if you're outdoors. Status can change if you're at a bar and you're talking about sports and somebody else, let's say a young woman is in the conversation. She has no status in this conversation unless she knows something about sports. But then somebody mentions something about nuclear physics and it turns out she has a degree in nuclear engineering, status instantly changes. Or if we're talking about, we're at a presentation where the President of the United States is giving a talk and somebody in the audience has a heart attack, all right? And the President says, is there a doctor in the house? Instantly, the doctor has more status than the President.
Oh, interesting.
So
yeah.
We would have to change our dialogue to do that, because the doctor could now say, quiet, shut up, and he could tell the President to shut up. You see, that would happen, and that would change the dialogue in the situation. So knowing what the status is and knowing how to change that status can make an interesting conversation.
Sure. I'm thinking, what if, I don't know why this, somebody going into a confessional, forgive me, Father, for I've sinned, and it's been 3 months since my last confession. And really the priest isn't saying much. Mm-hmm. The person is talking themselves either into a problem or out of a problem. And it's almost like their status is changing because they're not really getting too much back from this person.
Then there's the old story. I'm just going to tell you a very short joke if I can remember it well. 2 kids are talking and one says to the other, you got to go to confession because you were making out with somebody, or you want to make out with somebody, whatever happened. He goes to confession and the kid says, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I tried to kiss a girl. He said, what girl? Was it Camille? No. Was it Jody? No. Was it Karen? No. Was it Susan? No. Was it Graciela? No. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we don't know. Who was it? He tells him who it was. He leaves the confession. You know, he has to say his Hail Marys or whatever. He goes to see his friend. His friend said, well, did you tell the guy who you kissed? Well, I did. He said, and so did he forgive you? He said, no, but I got a lot of good leads.
Okay, that's good. I like that. That's good.
Status.
Yeah, okay. I like that.
Status
That's good.
changes.